62 Bra 166 10 3000.
Hey, and welcome back everybody, Ronan here. I'm going to preface today's video with the extension of my heartfelt condolences and prayers to everyone affected by last week's tragedy, and convey that this video is in no way intended to be critical, mean-spirited, or disrespectful in any way to those whose lives were lost in the mid-air collision on January 29th, 2025. I'll also state that while I have many flight hours and an interest in aviation, I am by no means an expert. I have 0 hours experience in an H-60 helicopter or a CRJ-700 series aircraft, and this video is just my perspective and opinion on the matter as a member of the greater aviation community as a whole. So let's get into the video. I wanted my first video for 2025 out to be about DCS and some of the new stuff I've been doing on there. But then last week, a pretty big event occurred in the aviation world, and I wanted to share my thoughts on it, so the DCS video will have to wait for now. I'm going to go over the facts, and then I'm going to share my thoughts based on what we know so far. So, here it is. On January 29th, 2025, at approximately 8:44 p.m. Eastern Time, or 0144 Zulu, a PSA Airlines under the American Airlines American Eagle banner, a Bombardier CRJ-701ER with the tail number November 709 Papa Sierra, identifying as flight number JIA 5342 or Blue Streak 5342, was inbound to Ronald Reagan International Airport, DCA, in Arlington, Virginia, from Wichita, Kansas, ICT. At around the same time, a U.S. Army Black Hawk, either a UH-60 or a VH-60 Gold Top, transport helicopter was conducting a proficiency flight out of Davison Army Airfield attached to Fort Belvoir in Virginia along the Potomac River along Helicopter Route 1. Their call sign was PAT-25. NVGs were equipped, but according to the NTSB, it is unclear if they were in active use. The CRJ was cleared to land at DCA via the Mount Vernon visual approach for runway 1. The tower asked the crew to switch to runway 33, which the crew acknowledged. Meanwhile, PAT-25 was continuing south along the east bank of the Potomac, and ATC advised them about traffic south of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, a CRJ descending for runway 33. PAT-25 acknowledged and asked for visual separation, which meant that they would accept responsibility for maintaining visual on the inbound aircraft and would be responsible for maintaining separation. As Blue Streak 5342 was descending through 500 feet in their turn to final, ATC asked if PAT-25 had the CRJ in sight, and once again, PAT-25 asked for visual separation. ATC informed them once more visual separation was approved, and moments later, at approximately 300 feet above ground level, the two aircraft collided. All 64 occupants of the CRJ-701 perished, as well as the 3 Army personnel on board the H-60. According to the flight charts around the DC area, runway 33 and runway 1 both intersect each other, as well as runway 1 is almost a direct north-south, whereas runway 33 is at an offset 33 degrees to the northeast. Route 1 for the helicopter route through the DC area, which is just south of the U.S. Capitol and the Washington Mall, follows the route along the Potomac River. It then transitions to Route 4 south along the Potomac past Ronald Reagan International Airport towards the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. A key note about this is that Route 1 has a published maximum altitude of 300 feet above ground level north of Memorial Bridge, just adjacent to the Washington Monument. South of Memorial Bridge, that altitude changes to a maximum altitude ceiling of 200 feet AGL, and then returns to 300 feet AGL south of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, which is approximately a mile south of the Ronald Reagan International Airport. According to what flight data I could gather, it would appear that the PAT-25 helicopter was above the published 200-foot ceiling for the helicopter route 1 or H1 as the CRJ was descending through 400 feet. The collision, according to some sources, and this is not 100% determined, as it probably will flesh out from the NTSB investigation, but sources I've seen, the collision occurred approximately 300 feet above ground level, which, for anybody who doesn't know math, is 150 feet above the published ceiling along helicopter route 1. From what I've been able to gather from other sources, including other pilots in that area, this is a common problem with this helicopter route, with helicopters breaking that limit in altitude above the helicopter route. Now, it is also important to note, according to the NTSB in their investigation, the H-60 was transmitting on ultra-high frequency, or UHF, and the CRJ was transmitting on very high frequency, or VHF, where they could hear ATC, but they could not hear each other. And that is one of the points the NTSB recently had to make a note of to dispel any confusion based on a lot of the audio that's been obtained and shared on YouTube. I want to say credit goes out for the audio that I have been listening to of the radio transmissions between the two aircraft and the detail with the overlay here of the flight data. Credit goes to VAS Aviation. He does a really good job of showing basically just this stuff and does an overlay with the live ATC data as well as the audio. So shout out to VAS Aviation for a job well done on this. It is also important to note, because there's been a lot of conjecture floating around along the internet about how, yes, this is the first major commercial air collision in over 16 years, and it's the first fatal crash in several years involving an airliner. However, it is not the first time that two aircraft have collided mid-air within that time frame, as these accidents do happen from time to time, two of which happened very close to where I live in the last 5 years. So it's important to note that while this is a rarity, it is also not super duper rare. It's not the most, rare. And in fact, the NTSB made a note that for, I believe, the last year, there were 1,288 investigations, and of those, 1,204 were aviation related in terms of incidents and accidents. Yes, there is a difference. I won't get into it because it's a whole bunch of FAA jargon that really it doesn't need to be discussed. So now that we have the facts that the helicopter was heading south along the helicopter route and the CRJ was inbound for runway 33 and the two collided, my thoughts. First of all, as I said, this was a tragedy. This was a very tragic accident. My heart goes out to everyone affected by this. These were wonderful human beings that the world is at a loss, and we are deeply mournful for their loss. So what do I think happened? Well, I've heard some theories online that the Blackhawk was calling out, that they had the CRJ in sight. People were saying they either saw the inbound American Airlines flight that was behind the CRJ, which wouldn't make sense for them to pass behind them because they would have been long past, and also they were inbound for runway 1. But there was also an aircraft departing along runway 1 that was a CRJ as well, as what people have reported, saying that they got confused as to which one. But that one doesn't make sense either because it was so far to the right from the helicopter's perspective. And passing, they would have been long past for them to be anywhere in conflict, plus way higher. So that doesn't make sense either. So there's possibility that they were in error on what they saw and what they reported as seeing. And also there's the whole, I'll get into it in a moment, but the whole night vision goggle thing. So the thing that what I think happened, and from what I've heard from people, is that fact one is that the helicopter did divert, you know, in excess of the 200-foot ceiling. The reasons I don't know. If it could have been a mistake. I know that when I've been flying, it's very easy to I don't want to say get disoriented, but kind of lose track of some things, especially while you're focusing your task saturated in an aircraft. You've got a lot going on. You have to compartmentalize the different things going on. And anybody who's played DCS, you get a taste of this. In real life, it's a lot more. A lot more attention needs to be paid because you're in, out, in, out. You're inside the cockpit. You're outside the cockpit. You're inside. You're looking at your instruments. You're doing your checks. You're checking left. You're checking right. You're making sure that you have visual separation. In my case, I'm looking at my EFB, seeing if there's any other aircraft in my airspace. I'm talking on the radio, talking to other people in the aircraft, or what have you. There's just a lot going on. So, yes, I've had it happen where, I've said on my flight plan, on like a cross-country flight, I'm going to fly at, 10,500 feet. And I'll get up to 10,500 feet, and I will click the autopilot a lot of times. Or, if I'm doing maneuvers, I won't click the autopilot, but doing maneuvers, and I'm flying from one location to another, and I'd say I'm going to hand fly this. I've noticed I've gone up and down a couple hundred feet from the altitude that I was established at. It happens a lot. And I've never flown a helicopter in real life, so I can't really say to, the different things going on with regard to altitude. If they stick with a static throttle input and just use the stick to fly, I know that they were moving approximately 101 or 104, between 101 and 104 knots from what I saw. So at 100 knots, I mean, you're moving pretty fast in a helicopter at 100 knots. And so that kind of, I think, contributed, is that they might have, the pilot, she might have lost kind of her bearings for a moment and deviated and went above altitude. And that's, I think, one of what I will speculate, and I hate to speculate on this, but what I will speculate, I think that is going to be one of the proximate causes that the NTSB determines for this accident. Another thing that I will mention, as I said before, is, well, for one, I've never flown with night vision goggles, but I have in the military used night vision goggles. I can tell you, one, flying at night is especially difficult because it is really hard to tell. Now, granted, I wasn't flying anywhere near as well lit as the DC metro area, which, from what I know of that area, it's a very lit up area, and it is very easy to, not realize which lights are what. But I have flown at night in and around the Denver metro area and the Colorado Springs area, both of which are not small cities. They're pretty substantial, and there's a lot of light sources. So you do have a lot of light sources that you can kind of get lost. And especially on a really dark night when you're flying above, call it above 1,000 feet, you're not really you can't pick out one light from another. It's very hard when you're moving to pick out other moving lights. And so the light aspect is very difficult, and flying at night is especially difficult and dangerous. That being said, if they were flying under goggle, I will tell you that night vision goggles are basically two tubes. It's especially with aviation goggles. The ones I had were a 2-to-1 tube. So the AN/PVS 7s, which you use both eyes, but there's only one tube, so it's like one circle in front of your face. And I can say, from what I know of the 2-tube aviation goggles, it's basically like looking through binoculars. That's the best way I can do it. It's just not magnified. And so with goggles, you have three main issues with regard to visual acuity. The first one is you have very little peripheral vision. I know with a lot of aviators, they have their goggles kind of pushed out so they can view through the goggles and then look down underneath the goggles to see their instruments. I never had that luxury, especially driving military vehicles under night vision. It's incredibly difficult. You are basically you can't. It's harder to put them out because of the helmet mount. But so you really have no peripheral vision. You're basically seeing this circle in front of your face that only allows for like 15 degrees, call it, of visibility. And then another problem with night vision goggles is the simple fact that you have a very reduced depth perception. You can't tell as well, especially with monocular vision or the single tube. And I would assume with double tube that it's not great, but it's probably improved a little bit on depth perception just because of the binocular vision instead of monocular vision. But you're still looking at either a green or white phosphor screen that is projecting the amplified image. So it really is. It's kind of like watching like on a television screen. It's not easy to pick out what distance something really is or perceive that. And then finally, the other issue is another name for night vision goggles is night amplification device. And exactly what the name means, they amplify light. You can get washout. I know it's not as well lit, but in Kabul, Afghanistan, I've had to turn the gain down on my NVGs because of the ambient light. It's just if there's a lot of light sources and they're all blasting at you, or your goggles are picking them up, you have to turn the gain down to be able to see better. And a lot of light sources, especially in and around an airport, can really saturate those sensors and get what's called washout, where you just have way too much light. That could be another contributing factor. I think the two main things, though, in this accident that I want to try and refrain from laying blame on anyone and just get to the straight what I think the facts are and say this is what a contributing factor was. So with regard to Blue Streak 5342, I think that they were established on their final approach into runway 33. They did everything according to procedures, and I find nothing wrong with what they did. They were coming in for a landing. They were cleared to land. It was their airspace. They were by the book. Whereas Pat 25, my estimation, without laying any blame, my estimation is that the H-60 was above the published altitude maximum of 200 feet for that helicopter route and did not have adequate visual confirmation of the other aircraft and failed to maintain proper separation. And that's what led to the collision. That is my opinion. Of course, we will see what happens with the NTSB over the days, weeks, potentially even months to come as they conduct their investigation. I wish them the best of luck in their investigation. Again, my condolences and prayers to everyone affected by this. My heart goes out to all of you. This was a tragic accident, and I want to stress it was an accident. All the political stuff, the politicization, and all that is completely unnecessary. I will not entertain anything relating to the identity of the pilots or anything like that at this time. I don't think that's relevant. From what I know, the instructor pilot CW2, and the aircraft had over 1,000 hours. Flight time in the 60, as well as the captain had over 500 hours, which is not an insignificant number, especially in the Army, where you have a lot of the aviation officers have other duties beyond just being a pilot. And so it's having known many Black Hawk pilots, many helicopter pilots in the military, hours, you're not flying every single day. You're not building hours as you would, say, a professional civilian commercial pilot, where you're flying a lot, like you're flying multiple days a week. So with that being said, please in the comments refrain from any conjecture about the identity of the pilots or any of the political aspects of this. It's completely unnecessary. I think none of that played a role. None of whoever is in the White House, none of that played a role. I don't think any of the administrators with the FAA or the air traffic control or with Ronald Reagan International Airport played any role. It was simply an accident where a helicopter went too high and struck an airplane as they were inbound to land. That is what I believe is the proximate cause, without laying any blame on anyone. So, yeah, this is a little bit different from usual, but it is aviation related, as I'm passionate about it and in the aviation realm. I appreciate everyone here. If you like the video, subscribe. It helps me out, and I appreciate every one of you. And everyone have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned. I will get more content coming up as 2025 continues to roll along. Thanks for watching.